advice that I would give to PhD students would be, firstly, not to worry as much. I remember when I was starting mine that I was very, very worried about actually being a PhD student. One, because obviously a lot of all the work that needs to go into it, but also that I was self-funded, which meant that I had to work alongside. So I was worrying the entire way through about actually paying my fees. But I probably should have utilised my supervisory team a lot more than what I did at the time. But that was something that I learned after my first year of doing my PhD. Something else that I would probably recommend to students as well is to talk to the other people that are doing PhDs as well. You're a community, they're all going through the same thing that you are, they all feel the exact same things, so isolation, stress, worry, all those things that are going on as PhD students, they're also going through the same thing, so you need to talk to them because they're also going through it, and you can actually have a nice little atmosphere going on of, oh, this is so awful, and they get it.
Do I have any advice for PhD students during their PhD? I think there's so many bits of advice really. I think the first thing is you need to have a really good PhD supervisor. That's not always within your control, but you do need to have people you can get advice from. So if your relationship with your PhD supervisor isn't ideal, then you need to find support from other later career mentors. That could be another PhD student, that could be a postdoc, that could be another faculty member. It doesn't even have to be in the same university, but you need to have people that you can rely on. Build your network. How do you do that? You have to put yourself out. You have to talk to people. Maybe you have to have you need to publish, and that's very important, I think.
Main thing that I would suggest about writing a thesis is to do it, because a lot of the time when you're doing it, it's a case of I'm getting sick of reading the same thing over and over again, or you read something and go, wait a second, did I actually write this? And you don't remember doing it. And you start coming up with excuses because you're worried about the quality of what it is and the content, particularly if you're doing a topic area where you've got a lot of people that are researching and producing studies around the same time, because you have to be on top of it all whilst you're doing it to ensure that you're getting the current arguments that are out there. But my PhD supervisor basically just said to me, just stop with the excuses and just write. And that's basically what I did. And the more that I actually wrote, the easier I actually found it. And that's just basically what I did with mine. And I managed to get it all written and submitted basically before I was actually meant to.
Do I have any advice on writing up the thesis? Don't procrastinate. You want to get these things done as quickly as you can. I think it's quite daunting writing a big book. And I think, therefore, you need to be thinking about individual chapters. And that's one of the reasons that I think it's better to write articles and staple them together than to write a big thesis, because they're manageable chunks.
My Viva was a little bit unique in comparison to what other people would probably go through, as my examiners had been my examiners for my masters, which meant that I'd come across them before. But what I would suggest is treat them not as experts, but people that can learn something. So you are the person who has done this study, you are the person who knows all of this research, you know exactly what you've done, and you know exactly what your thesis is about, but they don't. And I think not being afraid of them, but be more welcoming, and allowing them basically to see exactly what you've done. So like, you've done this research, you spent a lot of time and effort on it. This is to use, lack of a better word, but this is like kind of your baby. This is something that you've produced, and it's not something that they've done. So you should welcome them into that little world that you've made. But don't be afraid of them. And if you don't agree with something that they say, then don't be afraid to say no. They actually appreciate it, and you can actually talk about it. And it's one of those things where you're going to be on the same level as somebody regardless, because you've made this.
Do I have any advice on managing the Viva? Be prepared, or as prepared as possible for your Viva. There will probably be lots of questions that you don't think about, and then talk to your extended group, talk to your network and see what they have to recommend, and try to be as prepared to answer those questions as you can do. And if you don't know something, you have to admit it. There's no point in making up an answer because you'll look really stupid and you'll be caught out. So don't bother, don't go down that route. So like with any kind of teaching or whatever, it's just be prepared. So you wouldn't go to a class and not know what you're teaching, because it's awful when you do that and you're caught out, and you always are. So just preparation, and never try to lie because you're always caught.